Hello, this is chai time. Today I've got Neil with us. Where's your chai? so, so we've got Neil on today. Let me see if I can adjust this a little bit so that we're both clear in the picture. Okay, so we've got Neil with us today, and he's actually got an upcoming workshop this weekend at Clayton Yoga Shala in Clayton. And the title of the workshop is Introduction to Yoga
No,
Sutras.
it's a 4 weekend workshop,
Okay,
total 8 hours.
okay. So it's a weekend workshop, and it's going to be covering the entire Yoga Sutras with revision. And so, I've got a phone call. Apparently, this is not how Facebook Live works. Okay, so anyways, we've got this workshop coming up this weekend with Neil at Clayton Yoga Shala, and he's going to be covering the Yoga Sutras in detail in the entire 4 chapters, and then as well as his latest work, which is Patanjali Code, right here. And the Patanjali Code is essentially a revision of the Yoga Sutras, making them a little bit more sensible and uh, uh, more relevant to the modern practitioner. So, Neil, I'd like to ask you to start. I understand that you're both a teacher and a scholar, and can you tell us a little bit about that background of your scholarly work?
Oh, okay. So, the Sanskrit language is the language in which most of the yoga scriptures are written. For example, Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is definitely written in Sanskrit language. So, I have studied Sanskrit from very early age, and I'm constantly evolving my knowledge in that language. And as a part of that study, I also studied the Vedic literature. And you will find that the Sanskrit in the Vedic literature is different from the Sanskrit which is colloquial, you find in the dictionary. So you cannot find the meanings of the words of Patanjali Yoga Sutra terminology in the Sanskrit dictionary. You have to know this the etymology of those words coming from Upanishads. So this background is required, and I've been constantly studying Sanskrit for a long time now, 30 years at least.
Wow, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And do you, why do you think it's important to have a study of Sanskrit in order to study these texts, specifically the Yoga Sutras?
Okay. See, let's take the example of only Yoga Sutras. Yoga Sutras is a very, very terse text. That means that they try to bring a lot of meaning in a very short space, and it is also written in a very terse form. In a way, many words are mixed together. So in the Sanskrit language, the grammar is very, very complex. In fact, I think that out of all the languages, Sanskrit grammar is the most complex grammar. So in Sanskrit language, a small change to one word from to can make a big difference. For example, may be a male and may be a female. So that small change is not noticed by a person who doesn't know Sanskrit language, and therefore it can totally give a wrong meaning to that person if he thinks that he knows Sanskrit from the current colloquial usage or by using dictionary. So many current commentaries are written that way, and they have uh, missed the original understanding. Also, the only Sanskrit grammar or language is not enough. You have to know the etymology of philosophical words coming from Upanishads. So you have to either study them yourself, or you have to study with a person who has gone through that whole gamut from the Upanishadic to darshanas, like Yoga Darshan of Patanjali.
Okay. And so there are a lot of modern day commentaries then written by modern teachers. some with some Sanskrit background, some without Sanskrit background. So why is it important to, or could we maybe even talk a little bit about having a formal understanding of Sanskrit and how that has helped you understand the sutras differently than some of the modern day commentaries?
Before actually answer that question, you have to understand one anomaly in the yoga world today, that the people who know Sanskrit very well, they do not practice yoga at all.
Mm-hmm.
So they understand what the philosophy is trying to tell and the grammar of it, but they cannot relate it to any experiential knowledge. And in the modern world, we have a lot of experienced yoga teachers or yoga practitioners, but their experience is mainly in the asana field. And very few of them maybe also in a pranayam or breathing type of, very few people are experienced in meditation. A lot of people talk about meditation and they say they have done meditation, but they are not actually showing the effects of meditation, as I told you in my meditation workshop at Julie's house. So what I want to tell you is that, to make it short, the practitioners of yoga, they do not know Sanskrit, so they don't understand the philosophy. And those who know philosophy, they are not practicing yoga, so they don't have experiential knowledge. So you need somebody who has done both for a prolonged time, so that he can get a feel of what's happening in actual life as what is written in the philosophical world. Now, coming back to the Sanskrit, I already explained to you that the Sanskrit knowledge is must if you want to understand philosophy. But in the modern world, what's happening is that modern world practitioners are basically asana practitioners or some breathing, as I said. But what they are doing is, in order to substantiate their knowledge, they are using Sanskrit philosophical works. And Sanskrit philosophical works are not at all talking about the practices, what they are doing. But they are trying to create a relation between what they are doing. For example, they may be doing some asana practice and they want to prove that Patanjali is saying that you should do such a practice. Patanjali is actually not telling any asana practice at all. Patanjali is only telling you to do a asana for meditation purpose. But because Patanjali doesn't deal with Hatha Yoga practices, though Hatha Yoga can be a subsidiary or a complementary practice for Patanjali, but he directly is not talking in any sutra about direct practices of Hatha Yoga asanas or yogasanas. They're talking about only the meditation or maximum breathing asana. So they are trying to relate their current practice to a Sanskrit text, and they are trying to use the meaning of the Sanskrit using dictionary, whereas the Sanskrit in the Patanjali is coming directly from the Upanishad. So, for example, word chitta, chitta means something which gets conscious. So, if you look at the commentaries, some of them will use word mind stuff, some will say conscious body, or some. They can use variety of attention faculty and etc. So, one has to really know what chitta means in the Patanjali, because you have to understand that the chitta in the Patanjali is a very, very complex terminology. And I spent many years to search a script to scriptures where the chittam is defined. I'll tell you, there is no single text in the entire Sanskrit literature where chittam is defined. So in this book, this is the first book I wrote. It is 10 years ago, and I had defined chittam there, and I defined it as a faculty of attention. But what happened is that I was always due to my research background, I was always trying to know whether my definition is perfect or not. Then ultimately, when I studied the Vyasa Bhashya and some Upanishad, I found that my definition works, but actually there is one more layer to the definition of chitta, and that layer itself will take me 1 hour to explain. So you have to understand that in Patanjali, he is trying to take a person to samadhi state, and to get to the samadhi state, that person has to get a perception, almost a perception of what chitta means. It's like if you want to do a headstand, you have to get a perception of the head and the legs. Similarly, you have to get a perception of chitta. Then only you are able to understand what samadhi state can mean. So just sitting in a Padmasana is not going to take you a samadhi state. Otherwise, everybody would have gone by now. So that chitta, understanding of that chitta, and then practice of meditation, then again understanding of chitta. This reiteration has to be done to the point that you exactly get that point to the extent that you are able to actually manipulate that chitta, and then only you are able to do chitta vritti nirodha. Chitta vritti nirodha is not as simple as just bending the fingers. So you have to understand this Sanskrit related terminology, but only understanding that is not enough. You have to practice also. So you have to do both the things, and the practice you have to do is related to chittam. So in order to get to chittam, you may do some hatha yoga asanas, but ultimately you should get to chittam. If you never get to chittam, you will never be able to understand what Patanjali is trying to say.
Okay, and actually that kind of touches a bit on a question I'd like to know about, which is, you've created a revision, and you've also created your work of Adi Yoga,
Yes.
which if you saw in one of our 2 weeks ago, we had a live video where Neil spoke a little bit about his own creation, the Adi Yoga system. Why is the study of Patanjali Yoga Sutra, why is that still relevant to modern day practitioners? If we're doing this practice of Hatha Yoga, why is it important for us as practitioners to study the original text?
Okay, there are several reasons for it, and I will try to highlight two of them. See, first thing you have to understand is that yoga is a subject which is related to the mind, and that subject is trying to train the mind in order to get to a state of samadhi state, and then later on getting liberated, etc. However, why one wants to get to samadhi state? It's not like you want to show it on a stage. In fact, you cannot show it on a stage. But they are trying to get to that state of samadhi because they feel that if they get there, they will be able to get rid of all the sorrows. Or in other words, they will try to get some kind of bliss forever. Now, this concept of getting bliss or happiness is present in each and every human being, and this is the main subject of yoga. Now in the modern world, what people are doing is mainly physical practices or some mental practices in order to get stress relief, but that stress relief is also for physical health so that they can perform their activities, and they already know that these activities will go better, but they will never give them that full satisfaction. So they are resorting to the yoga field in order to get that health. But the yoga field is meant to get the mental training. So this mental training is in the scriptures. And what we are doing is not mental training at all. We are only doing the physical training. And as a part of that, some mental training is occurring. For example, if you are doing a certain asana, you have to focus on body parts, and a little bit of focusing of the mind is occurring, but that's not the meditation. And that focusing on the body part will help the asana, and you will get health and fitness, and your life will become better. But it's still not going to give you the permanent happiness. So in order to know what is there in the yoga field, you have to know the Sanskrit language, and then only you can practice it. That means you have to practice and also know what is given in the scriptures like Yoga Sutras. That is why it is relevant to study the older scriptures, because that is where the advanced practices of yoga are there. In the modern literature, you don't find any advanced practices. In the modern world, when we say advanced class or advanced training, we mean more and more difficult asanas. Actually, they are not giving the effect of mind. Sometimes it is hurting the people's even the body, because in the modern world people are not ready for that much physical practice due to other responsibilities they have, and they are trying to force their body to do those asanas, and they are getting injured. So they are neither getting physical nor getting mental.
So by studying the traditional texts for example, like the Yoga Sutras, we're more likely to understand how it relates to what we're doing today?
By studying the scriptures like Yoga Sutras, you will first come to know what originally they expected from yoga field and what is available to you. Now you will be able to make a choice that I want to do that or not do it. But if you never know it, you will never do that choice. Or you will only learn from a person who also doesn't know that. So you will be also learning from a person who is also limited. So you have to know that such a thing is available. So to know that, you should study it. And second is that whatever practice you are doing, it will, whether that practice is relating to the effects which are given in that, you will come to know. And if you do not want those effects, then you can choose. That is what my subject of Adi Yoga is, that if you do not want that effect, you can choose whatever you like. But if you want that effect, you will come to know what practice is suggested in the scriptures, and you will be able to know whether current practice what you are doing is matching with those effects. Otherwise, you will always think that those effects are only mystical and some impossible, some hypothetical stories are written. And that is the problem, that after some time you will feel that they are all only mythological stories, but actually that's not true.
That's pretty fascinating, actually. And how does, because your most recent work has been this book right here, the Patanjali Code, which is, he describes it as with rational presentation and critical comments and somewhat of a restructuring of the sutras of Patanjali. Why did you do this?
See, in this work, what I had done is, to give a very short description, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, approximately 195 sutras are there, and they are in 4 chapters. In this book, I have got 12 chapters, and I have added around 23 sutras to Patanjali Sutras, and I have modified around 20 of his sutras, original sutras, and some of his sutras I feel are not directly relevant to except the knowledge, they are not directly relevant to practice. For example, one sutra about walking on the water or flying in the air is not that much relevant to the practice of even Patanjali's goal of getting samadhi state. He is saying there that these are not practices one should. So those ones I put in the 12th chapter called auxiliary. Now, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, they are written in 4 chapters, and their arrangement is not logical. What has happened is that those sutras, how they came to us today in today's particular layout, is not known. It is quite possible that they were given in bits and pieces to a student based on the explanation he gave that time, and later on they were composed by some students, and they may be given orally most likely. So the arrangement is such that Samadhi, for example, Samadhi path, the first chapter is called Samadhi path, but the definition of Samadhi is in 3.4 in the 3rd chapter. So without understanding what Samadhi means, one starts studying the Samadhi path, and Samadhi is not just a state of superconscious like given in the English dictionary. Samadhi is defined by him as Tadevartha Matra Nirvasam Swarupa Shunyamiva Samadhi, means that certain particular modification of chitta takes place and only one object remains in the chittam. That means the chitta is becomes one with the object. So this definition has to be understood. For understanding that, chitta has to be understood, and chitta is not defined in Patanjali. So you can see that chitta is not defined. Based on chitta, samadhi is defined in 3.4, but samadhi path is given first. Now what some people have done is, those who are sort of fanatic, what they have done is they tried to explain this by saying that he had certain purpose in mind and that's why he is giving samadhi for advanced student, and then, but he is not saying anything like that. If he is giving it for advanced student, there should be one sutra which says atha samadhi padaha, advanced student, for advanced student. He is not saying anything like that. So what I have done is that I have rearranged these sutras in a in 11 chapters in such a way that it first starts with the history of sutras, then it defines all the relevant terminology, and then it slowly builds to the same goal. So when I wrote this book, I did not tamper with his original intention at all. His original intention is kept exactly same. Only places where some missing part was there, like chitta I have added. Then certain places where things were not clear, I have made them clear by adding certain things, and I have rearranged. And certain things which were not that much relevant to the modern practitioners understanding immediately as far as Patanjali's goal is concerned, I put them in the auxiliary, such as flying in the air, etc. So this book is already reviewed by scholars. So it is approved by the scholars of Sanskrit, and by, in fact, the Sanskrit, the new sutras which I did, the Sanskrit of that is done by my teacher. So that is the purpose of doing this book. And the reason I wrote this book is I taught this subject at least maybe 20 times. I taught this subject almost at a PhD level. So I came to know that people are not understanding, no matter what they do, they are not getting full understanding. So last year when I was here and I was teaching Nancy Anderson, who has studied it many times, I realized that I should rewrite this book, and then I wrote first version. It was approved by some scholars. Then later I wrote a complete version. I also got it approved by university now.
We should also add that in the very back of this book, he has the original structure of the sutras. It's essentially
this entire book is there inside.
It's at the very back
as an appendix.
You could read the original text as taught by Patanjali with Neil's, not a commentary, but a what would you call it, a translation?
Yes.
So then in the back it is the original text with Neil's translation of the text, and then in the front is his revision. And then I'd also like to add too that Neil, you mentioned that you are an adjunct professor at the University of Mysore.
Yes, I got that due to this book only. Due to this book, I got that professor's post. So I also want to tell you one more thing, that wherever I have made changes to the Patanjali's work, I have written critical comments in this book which explain why I made that change. Exactly what change I made. And now I'm writing a full-blown commentary on this book. It will take 1 year.
And then last but not least, if we could just, because I know one of the other things that's very important to you, and it's also part of your Adi Yoga philosophy, is the importance of chanting. And I know that one thing that you've mentioned is, I think you've said something like you've chanted the original sutras of Patanjali something like 10,000 times.
Yeah, see, what happens is that when I wrote this book and I sent it to certain scholars, they were surprised that I did this work, because this work has not been done in the last 2000 years. So they said that, how did you get this idea? That how did you come to know that you have to rearrange like that, and this is exactly what is there. So because this work has not been done by anybody, there is one scholar I met who is now 92 years old. He has done little bit of rearranging, but he has not done any critical comment. I met him in fact in Pune. And then there is one person called some Mitra who lived in 1920 or 40s. He tried to do this work, but he didn't complete. But what I want to tell you is that they asked me how I got this idea. So I want to tell you this. First, of course, I know the meaning of those sutras very well. So I had memorized the sutras first. That probably I must have sung it at least 500 times or 1,000 times to memorize them. Then after that, I know the meaning of those sutras. I also made one audio in English chanting also I made. Then what I did was, I chanted these sutras at least 5,000 times before I wrote this book. So when I was chanting these sutras, the meaning of that sutras also I contemplated along with the chanting. So what I want to tell you is that chanting is to get that into your brain, and without using the book you can contemplate. Now you have to know the meaning of that, and that meaning should be contemplated. And when I did that, I came to know all the links within this book. In fact, this work, he's already done, such a work is done in Bhagavad Gita. So if you are a scholar of Bhagavad Gita, you'll find that some people have done this work. So this is one method that one has to totally memorize a text, which is important text, something like this. And then you will come to know all the intricacies of that text inside. Then you'll be able to explain them. But more than explaining, you'll come to know those intricacies and you can rewrite a revised text like this. So the chanting helped me to do this work. And yes, I have chanted them at least 10,000 times by now, including my initial. So I prefer that a person takes benefit of chanting. Now, another thing is that when I chant the Yoga Sutras, I chant them in a melodic way. So my concerts are held at some places. So what I want to tell you is that it also gives me a meditative benefit, or a melodic, peaceful meditation takes place. And many people have experienced that, including Julie's son. He is asking to chant that during the night to Julie. She is learning from me now. So what I want to tell you is that chanting has many benefits, including physical benefits are there. So those I will be covering in the chanting workshop. But I just want to tell you that one of the benefit is to get the knowledge of the philosophical texts like this and keep that knowledge with you for contemplation. Otherwise, you have to carry the book all the time and refer to it, and it will be always incomplete knowledge.
Thank you so much, Neil, for really not only an amazing piece of work, but also for coming here to the Bay Area and making yourself available for the community. As we mentioned, Neil has a workshop this weekend, and you also have a chanting workshop. When is that?
No, the chanting workshop, nobody came on that day.
Okay.
But I'm able to give that workshop. I'm not occupied now I'm occupied only 30% now.
Okay.
And I'm teaching chanting to Julie every day here. So if somebody wants to learn chanting, they can approach me and we can work out something.
Neil also does, in addition to chanting workshops and Yoga Sutra workshops, like he mentioned, he also does one-on-one private instruction, or also with a small group. So if you have a small group of students who are interested in studying, I highly recommend it. Neil's going to be here for 3 more weeks.
No, my stay has increased.
Okay.
I got 2 more students now.
Okay.
One from Berkeley and one from. So the stay is definitely increased to end of May.
Okay. So fantastic. So if you're interested in more information, or also Neil's books, you can reach directly out to Neil. He's got his personal page here on Facebook, which is it now called the Adi Yoga?
Or Adi Yoga.
Neil, you can follow him. Anyways, if you have more questions, please let us know. And then Neil, is there anything else you'd like to add? Oh, and he also makes wonderful Samadhi chai. So if you want to achieve Samadhi rather quickly, you drink his chai. Okay, and if you would like to learn how to make chai, I think he also does lessons on that as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, so until next time, have a wonderful rest of your day and take care.
Namaste.
Namaste.